Episode 3 begins where episode 2 concluded, with Vida and Mildred in bed. But what was astonishing to me when I saw this episode is that I'd forgotten from the novel just how telescoped that week is for Mildred. In a very short period of time, she quits her job as a waitress, she meets Monte, Ray dies, and she opens her restaurant. And I think that's all about 5 days, something like that.
We expanded it a little bit from the book, which literally has her starting the restaurant the day after the funeral or something brutal. There's a good product that comes out of bad stuff sometimes. And I think Mildred is an amazing character with a very contradictory and fascinating system that she's constantly transforming energy into something productive.
And she's doing this incredibly creative thing, but she really tries to manage it in the most practical way possible. Like she set up the kitchen so she can see the parking lot and know how many people are coming. She's already cut the pieces of chicken up so that it moves along efficiently. And then it all kind of unravels on opening night.
3 is such a crazy episode because it packs so many events, but also temporalities into 1 hour-long piece, and a major chunk of it, a third of the whole episode, is this opening night. And it's a very exciting night, and it's very well described in the book, and something irresistible to not get into the minutia of that. And I love films about business life that really get into the details of that. And it really becomes a sort of backstage musical, where you're contrasting these 2 realms of behind the scenes and then the dining room.
Yes, who's coming into a restaurant right this very instant?
With the emergence of Monty, what you see is the issues of class get a real focus because that relationship is so complicated for Mildred.
It's a very interesting balancing act where she gains access to this man and his world and his culture, which mean everything to this daughter whose love she covets and desires. And yet there's a boundary drawn between those worlds. And sure, she's a working restaurateur at this point. She's busy. We get it. But there's something more going on there. And you see it maybe most dramatically in the polo scene. There's a point at which she can't step any further into this realm, and she remains an observer. What we learn very quickly after that is that this world is also an illusion, and that Mildred's basically underwriting it. And so it's a further hidden labor almost, secret labor that's supporting and propping up this value that her daughter aspires to and that Mildred wants for her daughter but doesn't feel eligible to participate in herself.
One of the crucial scenes in this episode is Christmas morning. Mildred has so wanted to give Vida the piano, and in part because of the way that she's underwriting Monty's life, she can't afford now to do it and gives her a wristwatch instead. But that's where I think the relationship between Mildred and Vida and Monty explodes. That's the scene where she reveals to Vida that, in fact, she's been paying for everything.
In a way, I think she likes feeling like she's giving Vida something authentic. But at the same time, the closeness of Vida and Monty has crossed a line, and the sort of nagging feeling that she's not being respected and diminished constantly by both of them, and that there's much more confidences between the two than she knew.
This is the episode also on Christmas morning where Mildred slaps Vida, and this time, unlike in the first episode, Vida slaps her back.
Everyone can be cruel to their parents and say those things that you just immediately regret years later and just feel so brutally guilty. Vida, I think, takes that kind of guilt and has a defense of it and turns herself into a kind of martyred object of it. It's almost like the hurt she instills on her mother, she somehow takes on in a masochistic fashion and wants to be hit. You know, there's this weird way in which she masters even that guilt that would limit the cruelty that we inflict on our parents and take it on as a personal injury almost.
It's a dynamic that Mildred seems to share. I think the way that the episode concludes is that you've got this sense of she's gone over there to confront Monty, but also to kind of be humiliated.
Well, it's so funny. I almost feel like the only time Mildred knows how to enjoy a secondary cultural status, enjoy wearing a uniform, is in Sex with Monty, where those roles have a sort of safe way of being played out in interestingly sadomasochistic but class-determined, and she can derive some pleasure out of it in a fantasy scenario.